some folks in the room in the post-COVID period. Welcome, and then really happy to have many of you online. Funny, I'm not actually seeing myself here. I'm assuming that, Paige, are you seeing the speaker?
Yeah, you're that corner right there. And so when you move to right there next to the PowerPoint, we can see you.
But not over here. I better be over here, huh? You probably all know Paige Tollison. She's the program manager for IOE and has organized the Rough Cut for years now. Continue to do so. Thank you, Paige. We want to talk today about, among other things, topic of the rough cuts for the fall, that being the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, to sustain it. That's the topic because it's one of the research themes we hope to develop in the coming phase of IOE. When we talk about phase of IOE, that speaks to this being part of a longer term program. So much for that.
You need somebody to advance your slides for you?
Well, that's fine. That's not working, but this is. I guess I'll just have to reach over here to do it.
Do you want me to sit here and advance your slides?
Yeah, that'd be great. And then is this in the full presentation mode?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, you know that basically IOE has been around for 30 years under one name or another, but these programs all have in common goal of fostering interdisciplinary and interdepartmental collaboration to address emerging environmental issues. Next. And you can just use the mouse to scroll down. If you just the wheel.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So what I'd like to do is talk about topics, potential IOE directions for this coming phase. A little bit about what types of interdisciplinary research I've done in the past. Kind of the rationale and topics and speakers for this fall semester, rough cuts. And then this is really about, rough cuts is all about discussion. It's the speaker is supposed to get a break in terms of not being required to do a formal presentation or a particularly well-crafted presentation, but rather focus on new ideas and generate discussion. In that regard, I wonder if you could all be thinking about these questions. We want IOE to be useful to you. And hence the questions, what about IOE in the past have you found useful or valuable? Then how could IOE be configured to best help you tackle larger interdisciplinary issues? So we'll come back to that towards the end. What does the IOE aim to accomplish and how? What I'd like to do now is just give a brief overview of what we have in mind. It's not yet been vetted by the IOE community or the advisory board, so it's potential. And again, your feedback on what I'm about to present, how to shape the program, would be much appreciated. With regard to mission, promote interdisciplinary environmental sciences. So that's consistent with the whole history of the program. What's the goal of that interdisciplinary research? Increase knowledge. That's what we do at universities, and do education. So this is really what MSU is all about. But on what topic? And I'm suggesting to be on sustaining nature and people. And why do we want to do that? Basically, provide information that's useful to the people that are really making decisions about that human nature interaction. So as a university, we don't advocate. We try to produce the knowledge that will help people make decisions. And so the objectivity is quite essential to our core mission. The goal then is to basically do things that help faculty and graduate students to develop that objective knowledge, effective education, and to actually do the communication that will help stakeholders make decisions. Next, there's 4 objectives that we've identified. I'll talk just briefly about each of the 4. Facilitate interdisciplinary research by faculty and grad students. How do we do that? Well, people are busy. They already have their research networks. What can IOE do to move that forward still further? Well, I think it's a lot about getting people together to share knowledge, stimulate new ideas, build a sense of community and trust among us, and then do mentoring of each other, both older faculty mentoring earlier career and vice versa. The specific activities that we have in mind, fortunately, there's some funding for graduate student fellowships. And then these others are largely aimed at communication and interaction among us. Rough Cut series, the monthly newsletter. We just initiated basically a coffee hour Wednesday mornings. And Andrew Felton came up with the name Idea Exchange, integrating diverse ecological applications. It's just an informal place for folks to get together, get to know each other, chat about research ideas. And then we've always had a happy hour once a month. We'll hope to continue that, and we might start some sort of annual field trip. Next. So IOE is currently funded through one philanthropic source, and that's been matched by the Vice President for Research. If we're going to exist, we have to raise money. And that's to be through either competitive grant opportunities or through philanthropy. So that we basically want to do activities that are going to encourage research teams to come together, tackle bigger issues in the context of specific solicitations from funding agencies. IOE's in a nice position to help with that grant writing, and particularly with administration of budgets. And that's a nice tool that we can provide to the community. And then with regard to the philanthropic support, we want to work with the MSU Foundation. More specifically, we want to motivate groups of people to come together and work to be competitive to win competitive grants. That's NSF, whatever is at 5% funding rate now. We want to be in the 5%. If not the first year we submit a particular proposal to a particular solicitation, then in the second year. And that's going to take, that's a lot of doing to accomplish that, but that's a goal. USDA, EPA, all the other programs similar. NASA. There is funding to provide seat grants for these research teams on these three themes, and I'll come back and talk about each of those. And then we've already begun discussions with the MSU Foundation, and they seem likely to be extremely helpful in helping us to nurture relationships with philanthropists. Go to the next. This is a little less tangible. Thought we could move that box so that it's blocking less of the text. Basically, it just enhanced visibility of EES on campus, particularly with the MSU administration. And that's largely through our different activities on campus and are being supervised out of the Vice President for Research's office. And then fourth and finally, it's to really try to link with the broader community. Next slide. And that would be the broader MSU community, but also the people of the state and the broader region that are interested in these vital environmental issues. A lot of this involves co-learning. That is really trying to understand our constituents, what their values are, what their challenges are, what we can do that's helpful. And it's only through that co-learning that our objective information will be taken seriously and might actually be used by folks in their decision making. So we hope to do a distinguished lecture series to reach this broader audience. Paige is working now on trying to make the web pages very effective and useful for the different communities that are linked to IOE. IOE has been a co-sponsor of the biennial Yellowstone Science Conference. That's highly successful this past May. And then we want to discuss with the advisory board whether forming a community engagement committee would be helpful. People from the outdoor recreation world, from high tech, from NGO communities, et cetera, that could advise us on how to be relevant to their various. So Paige, if we could go next, we're really fortunate in having an expanded advisory board that just came together for the first meeting this past week. We have folks from 8 departments and from USGS that have agreed to be on the board. And again, the hope will be that they will review all this material and really advise us on how to configure the IOE activities in order to best accomplish our goals and mission. Thanks. So let's go next page. Just a word or two about these research initiatives. We're in a nice position in having about 170,000 that can go to each of 2 initiatives over this 3-year phase. In order to, do things like provide summer salary for PIs, provide graduate student support convening of workshops, all aimed at developing competitive grants. These are some of the examples of topics that have emerged in discussions so far. They're only examples. Anything could be put forth. It's largely a matter of for what topics do we have a team of people that are really fired up to go after them and are likely to be competitive in winning support for research under these themes. So cold water fish under climate change, invasive human pressure. This seems like a natural in this place. Similarly, tipping points with regard to ecosystem resilience, fire and drought. Bruce has been leading work on really fascinating work with regard to bison as a keystone mega herbivore and how reintroduction of bison might be relevant to restoring native prairie. Of course, people and nature are the core theme, and so trying to build on a variety of projects MSU currently has that really aim at rural communities, their well-being, equity. Ungulate connectivity, migration, winter range, under climate change, under expanding land use, in the presence of disease and predators. Seems like a very rich and important topic. And then things relating to hydrology. We don't yet have a mechanism by which we would identify which teams would get the support for the team building. And that's one thing your ideas would help and advisory board. The second theme has been identified to date, and that's GYE, hence the rough cut focusing on that. Exactly what form that would take is yet to be discussed and determined. We had an opportunity in May and June and July to develop a proposal that came out under the Biden administration to really try to facilitate private land conservation implementation, on the ground conservation of private lands, but in the context of large landscape issues. We were able to pull together about 6 different successful existing conservation collaboratives in the context of this proposal, with the idea that project would actually fund additional on the ground conservation on their properties, but do so in a way that is informed by science from across GYE, and in fact lead to a network, GYE network of conservation collaboratives. That's been sort of the dream for a lot of people for 50 years. Coordinated management across public-private lands across GYE. Anyway, that's what this proposal is aimed at. So we're pretty excited about that and hope it would get funded. And then Kathy Willock has been, of course, leading the Montana climate assessment. Bruce has been heavily key player in that, and the Yellowstone climate assessment. And she's been really active with the foundation, trying to get support for the next phase of that work. So that would be a third theme that probably can be funded with monies outside of those available for these two. And then next, if we talk about the philanthropic opportunity, Donald Lawson in education has just been a great colleague for us foundation to try to advance goals. And in a meeting with her just a couple days ago, she largely pointed out that philanthropists tend to identify with particular themes or topics, and that if we want to reach them, we need to reconfigure IOE to the themes that resonate with these groups. And each group might have one particular theme that they support and not others. So we like to have a portfolio of activities that could be seen as relevant to the variety of potential funders that the foundation is working with. And this is sort of the list that came out of the conversation with Donna, that themes often deal with places, and the geography of IOE, I think has at least included these 3 portions of the region, and certainly open to whatever geography is relevant to the mission. And then a variety of issues like working landscapes and lifestyles, species, at risk, keystone, charismatic, and then capacity, like endowed chairs, like graduate student fellowships, like actually being able to monitor health across these places and with regard to these species and issues. So this is some of the way we hope to work with potential donors and be able to have a funding strategy that's both successful with competitive funding agencies, but also with philanthropists. And then you might wonder, you know, what my background is that might be relevant to helping us achieve these objectives and goals. You know, I've largely done interdisciplinary team science throughout. And boy, yesterday evening, I just got to start to think about, heck, really, have I been working on? And basically thought that this represented basically whatever 30 years of work. Within ecological systems, really trying to understand the key drivers of productivity, of ecosystem energy, and of biodiversity, with primary productivity being a heavy driver of, for example, species richness. And all this being couched in terms of how do we maintain healthy ecosystems. I've largely focused on wildland-centered large landscapes like Greater Yellowstone, and particularly on variation in space and how that's really relevant to understanding these relationships and to managing effectively across large landscapes. You can't study the ecosystem though without including, next page, next slide, human system. And I've particularly been focused on how land use influences the natural ecological component. But one has to understand where land use is likely to occur, intensify. And so really getting at drivers of land use, including infrastructure, socioeconomics, but also the role of natural amenities that we know is potentially important in these large wildland ecosystems. And again, this is all aimed at trying to maintain ecological health. And so having the endpoint be actual strategies for management, sustaining and restoring. Go to the next slide. Hey, no surprise here, right? Whatever we do with the ecosystem feeds back on us as people. And human well-being is obviously a critical goal for all of us. And it's really the interaction between these two that's the holy grail challenge. Now, my own work has not much dealt with this feedback. Just a few studies, mostly led by my colleagues, have. But I see for IOE, this is really where we need to be strong as well as here. For my own work, I started largely dealing with Greater Yellowstone, working with Bruce and Jay Rotella and Kathy Whitlock. My geography is expanded to the northwestern U.S. and the north central U.S. and then U.S. wide, some studies North America scale, and then studies in various parts of Africa and most recently in the global humid tropics. By working across these different ecosystems, I've really come to the perspective that this socio-ecological framework, it plays out differently in different. As a consequence, the things that really are key threats to these two vary from place to place, and I think they vary predictably. And so the goal would be to actually have an anticipatory conservation biology, where you could basically say, if you're working in the boreal forest, here are the three top likely issues that really impact the well-being of these two components of the system. But in the human tropics, it's a very different set of issues. All of this allows us to basically put our energy where it's likely to be most effective. Hey, so that's an overview of what I've been working on. And again, hopefully it helps us develop an IOE, some of our directions. Now, each of you, in coffee hour, we need to show each person's Venn diagram and then look at really where are the intersections and what can we do together that we can't do individually. So if we go one more, let's talk about this series, this rough cut series. We're entitling it this, consistent with Mission for IOE. This is more or less what I gave Paige to start with in terms of what I thought were reasonable sequence of topics. First, dealing with the major pulses, the major pressures that are really kicking this system, like climate, basics, what people are doing, and explore those drivers in terms of the science, the major science issues, like large rivers, cold water fish, like ungulate connectivity, like fire management, bison management, grizzly bear, and human conflicts, water quality. And then to begin to tackle sustaining these or restoring these, really trying to get the perspectives of different members of the community, like the local county commissioner, like the members of the ranching community, land trust community, the outdoor recreation community, and then try to put it all together in terms of really what does large landscape conservation look like, science perspective, policy, and especially a collaboration perspective. Of course, we wanted to get the very best people, best speakers for these topics. They're busy people, and we're not available in this sequence. But so if we look at the actual schedule, next slide, topics are not in the same order as before, but we got really great folks, and overall, we're going to cover most of those topics that we looked at in the last slide. So we start off with Patrick Gyrock next week, who's, you might notice from the newspapers, has been really active recently on river and fish management. With for example, the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Advisory Board. And then we have Steve Hosteller, who's a leading climate change scientist with USGS. Arthur Middleton really led a lot of the National Geographic work in Yellowstone and has quite high visibility. Catherine Kelly is locally and has been doing really great stuff with the Montana Land Reliance in terms of conservation easements. Of course, Todd Wilkinson has started the Mountain Journal and is a very prolific author on GYE identity, issues, solutions. Daniel Anderson has been a lead basically on collaborative conservation. I haven't actually met Megan Lawson, but is a leading expert with regard to outdoor recreation and some of its impacts and some of the opportunities. And then Benner is an ecologist with Custer Gallatin Forest, and he's going to talk with us about their work regarding fire management. And then Robert L. Chopany is one of the 5 or 6 people here on campus that's really been working together and doing really great things with climate change, species effects of cold water. So it should be a really interesting seminar series, and I look forward to folks participating in it. And so that's the formal material that I wanted to cover. I wonder now if we could just have a chit chat about these questions, but also whatever else came to mind through this or has been on your mind about IOE and its directions. And again, I appreciate those of you that are online. Paige, why don't we just switch out of the PowerPoint, hopefully be able to get a better sense of the folks online. And I hope that those of you online will not be bashful in speaking out or doing the hand raise or getting Paige's attention or another. Again, the opening most specific question would be, most of you have been around IOE for some years. What about it do you like? What's worked for you?
I can offer one, but it's great to meet other people, and especially in other primary things I've got attending this.
And MSU really is a departmentally organized institution, isn't it? So we don't see each other much through our normal departmental activities. And that's why getting together in forums like this is helpful.
Yeah, you realize there's people all over campus doing interesting things. And there's the collaboration aspect. Possibilities of interaction. Interdisciplinary. I was here 30 years ago with the first organization version that you have there. Kathy Hansen was in on it. We had grad students from all over campus. And it was pretty neat to know that there's people not in the history department. But meeting people in other.
Other thoughts?
Michael, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Uh-oh, we can't.
Am I unmuted now?
Is a historian of science.
I should be unmuted, am I?
Should check the level down here.
You're unmuted. I think they're having
Michael,
trouble in the
sorry
room.
about that. Could you try talking again?
Oh, unfortunately, we're not hearing you yet.
Michael, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine and I'm unmuted on my end.
Okay, we can hear you now. It's just through my computer.
So I have unrelated questions. It's just where the IOE is standing on these issues, and it's what my department, two things they're interested in. One was the idea of the University of the Yellowstone, and I was wondering where it is and where the IOE is in relation to it. And then the last is what we consider a very exciting development on the geological field stations and the possibility of that, which I noticed, you know, a poll or a questionnaire was just released by Paige. So if you want to speak to either or both of those.
Would anybody online want to talk about University of Yellowstone or in the room here, its current status? I think Diane, perhaps you might be in the best position to do so.
Okay, yeah, I'll chime in to say that I have been asking some questions about the idea of a University of the Yellowstone, and I think there are some political challenges with that terminology. You know, it potentially could alienate certain groups. So what I've been told is that we should think about the components of that proposal that was put together by an amazing group of people right before COVID, and think about the pieces of that proposal that we could go forward with. But I think maybe the name University of the Yellowstone is not something that's going to get as much traction as we thought originally. And I would also say that a group of us have been having some conversations about possibilities of partnering with the Forest Service on field station ideas. And Andy and I and Kathy Whitlock and Mary Hubbard recently met with Donna Lawson from MSU Foundation about field station ideas. So there are some ideas in the hopper, and we need to know who's really serious about this, because we need to have a critical mass to pursue something like a field station. It's a heavy lift, but I think it's a great idea.
And then, thanks, Michael, for the question. In regard to University of Yellowstone, it somewhat raises the question of interdisciplinary undergraduate classes and research, along with graduate students. And currently, we're only funded through the VPR's office, who of course doesn't deal with undergrad education specifically. And as a consequence, we focused the programs on the stuff that I showed that more or less did not deal with undergrad education. At the same time, so many of us across campus just see a huge opportunity to do new classes that are interdisciplinary. And that's really one of the reasons why University of Yellowstone got so much play earlier on. There's just a huge opportunity. It could be that the provost's office becomes more interested in programs like that. And so I think the more that we can encourage discussion among faculty, start some more interdisciplinary undergrad classes, demonstrate success, more likely we can move forward on campus in that regard. And then the field station is pretty cool to get to the point of actually doing a survey to try to gauge demand. And based on that provides hopefully good direction for us as to how to proceed. Diane Dubinsky in particular has been leading that effort, so we can really thank her for that. Other questions, comments, or things listed in chat? What about, what IOE can do in the future that would be helpful to folks? And Andrew Felton, for example, I see you're on. If you can hear, so you're newer to campus, mid-career with a lot of experience elsewhere. Have you seen programs like this in your other universities, and What do you think IOE could do that'd be useful to you?
I've seen things similar to it. At Utah State University, there's an ecology center. I don't even really know. I mean, that was just a central hub, I think, to flow money through. So I didn't feel like that was really fostering collaborations or anything like that. At Colorado State University, the graduate degree program in ecology, um, it's cross departments and even colleges. So maybe it's similar to the PhD program in ecology here a little bit, but I guess as a new faculty member, providing opportunities that will facilitate grant proposal writing, and probably what would precede that is getting people together to talk about ideas and things like that idea exchange. I guess that's why I thought of that. But um, things that will facilitate, uh, you know, those sorts of research activities like proposal development is just one of the first things that comes to mind, and having it be um, a way to prevent people from getting siloed, I guess, too. And maybe it already has these goals, but those are two things that come together: grant proposal development and getting people to, to foster collaborations. I don't think those are novel ideas, but those are two things that come to mind.
Thank you. Sarah Church, I wonder if you would comment. You've been long involved with IOE. What are your observations about what's been useful in it, or how it could be more useful?
Yeah, I just echo what was already said. I think I really appreciate actually the rough cut, the roughness of the rough cut, and the idea of sharing ideas and meeting people and understanding what research is going on across the university is important. In terms of, I agree about the proposal development, and what my mind went to is whether there could be a structured process, not just are these people interested in getting together and working on this, but like kind of like Nika's boot camp, grant writing boot camp. Like, could we have a structured how we get together and work on ideas all the way through the proposal? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud right now, but I think it's important to have that space to discuss ideas and figure out ways that we can all work together and fund our students well enough that we can actually bring students to Bozeman and this new expensive world we're living in.
Well, let's continue the discussion on the boot camp idea. Maybe we can try to flesh that out further. I think we're probably about where we need to let folks go to get on to the rest of the day. I wonder if there's a final comment or. Again, really appreciate all of you participating in your comments, and please try to communicate with us offline or in these other events to continue the discussion. And we'll look forward, hopefully, to seeing you all next week for Patrick's Rough Cuts presentation. All right, thank you.